Hi guys, today I'm going to be planting a tomato in the garden. This is the last tomato plant going in the garden this year. The rest of them were planted a couple of weeks ago. The first thing I'm doing is digging a big old hole, and this is what my soil looks like. It's pretty much muddy chunks of clay. Luckily for me, tomatoes grow perfectly fine in clay soil. So if you have clay soil, don't be intimidated. You can probably grow tomatoes in it. Mine grow very tall and they produce lots of fruit for me. This tomato plant is long overdue to be planted out. The lower branches look terrible, but that's okay. I'm going to be pulling these stems off anyway because I like to bury my tomato plants about halfway up the length of the stem. The reason I do it this way is because tomato plants make new roots wherever the stem touches the soil. Now I'm just going to fill this hole back in with a mix of my native clay soil and some bagged store-bought compost. This particular bag also has some cow manure in it. I try to break up these chunks of clay a little the best that I can, but it's usually muddy when I put my plants in the ground, so I can only do so much. It is what it is. I'm also putting some slow release fertilizer down into the planting hole. I think this is a 564 or something like that. I just make sure to use something that has all three, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in it. Now I'm mulching the plant. First I'm laying down some paper. It's going to help keep the weeds out, but it will end up rotting down before the season is over. Straw is a cheap and effective mulch that's available to me most of the time anyway. I'm having a hard time finding straw this year, but I should be able to get some more straw in June once the farmers start baling. If you have clay soil like I do, then I highly recommend mulching your garden. If you have ever grown a garden in clay soil and you didn't mulch it, then you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It's either a wet, muddy mess, or it's hard as a rock with big giant cracks running through it. Mulching your clay soil will make your gardening chores so much easier. You will have very few weeds if you put your mulch on thick, and the weeds that you do have will also be really easy to pull out of the ground. Pulling weeds out of hard, dry clay is kind of like trying to pull weeds out of concrete. It's a really big chore. I hardly ever have to water my tomato plants as long as there's mulch on the soil. All of this mulch is eventually going to rot down, providing organic matter to your soil. Organic matter is something that clay is usually very lacking in. Once it rots down, it's going to provide nutrients to your garden, and slowly but surely it will improve your soil at least a little bit. It's also going to help protect your tomato plant's leaves from any diseases that have overwintered in your garden from previous years. But just keep in mind that some diseases come in with the wind. My biggest tomato disease problems are Septoria leaf spot and early blights. Believe it or not, summers in southern Ohio are very sticky and humid. It's a perfect little breeding ground for plant fungal diseases. I'm going to talk more about how I manage these diseases in a later video. And by manage, I mean keep them in check the best I can. My plants will get these diseases every single year, but I am able to manage them and keep my plants alive. And as I said, we'll talk about that in a later video. Real quick before I go, I want to talk a little bit about plant spacing. You could space your tomato plants anywhere from, I don't know, maybe 18 inches at the minimum to 3 feet apart. How far you space them out is really going to depend on how heavy of pruning that you're going to be doing. Some people prune their plants down to a single stem. Other people just let their plants go wild. And then there's people that fall somewhere in the middle. If you plan on single stemming your plants, you can probably get away with planting them close together. If you're just going to let them go wild and you have big old tomato cages that you built, you're going to want to space them out further. If your tomato plants get fungal diseases, then you might want to space them out a little further. It's really up to you. You just kind of got to get a feel for it and see what works the best for you. And that's all for this video. If you want to follow along and see how I grow my tomato plants, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.